So, John Boy and Marianne, you've carried on with your discussion on arachnids, and scorpions we get here, scorpions and spiders. John Boy, you've got spiders. I have to admit that I'm afraid I don't know what a recluse spider is. I'm going to hope desperately that we don't get them here, and therefore that I'm off the hook for being ignorant. I will try and find out. And then Marianne, you say that you've seen a scorpion hide in Mark's hat. And okay, sorry, I've got some information on a recluse. It's a violin spider. We do get them here. I'll get back to that. So Marianne, you say that you saw a scorpion bite Mark on the forehead, and it was hiding in his hat. And for those of you who don't know, Mark he's a highly experienced presenter and bush person. He's just left us, and he always wore a hat as far as I know. I'm astonished that he didn't manage to see the scorpion before it stung him on the head, but that doesn't sound like a very pleasant experience at all. But you hear of it from time to time, of scorpions, have I heard of them being in someone's hat. He didn't seem to show any ill effects from it. Certainly when by the time I met him, he was in fine fettle. I'm just going to stop next to this herd of impala, try and come up with some, and then I have decent information on some violin spiders, which we do get here. Rather nastily backlit, but it's quite pretty, especially with those last sort of winter colours. Beautiful. I really love the colours of the leaf. Get great leaves, splat the stashes out of them. Beautiful. I really love the colours of the leaves at this time of the year. We don't get great splashes of reds and oranges and pinks like you do in the northern hemisphere, or at any higher latitude really, but it's always nice to see them when they do occur. I'm trying desperately to find a picture of a violin spider to show everybody who perhaps doesn't. Quite a powerful venom. That's the one I was talking about that causes necrosis of the skin. And necrosis, if you don't know, means basically it'll bite you and you'll start to rot from that point. And they can leave very nasty scars if gone untreated. Quite slow acting poison. And feel like a mosquito bite for a day or two, and then suddenly basically bits and pieces of your flesh will start to fall out. It's a violin spider. Right, we're quite close to the Arathusa airstrip at this stage, and we're just going to pop around the corner and see if there aren't any wild dogs or leopards waiting to catch the next flight out. Numb for the next 3 days after his scorpion bite, or sting, not bite at all. Well, I'm not surprised. I'd say he got off quite lightly, and they're not there are a few fairly nasty scorpions out here. Again, unusual, but there are a few nasty ones. Far more totally harmless ones though. Going to get an update on the radio, so will you excuse me for 1 second? Good morning stations, any updates on Nkuhuma this morning? Oh well. Giraffe tracks on the road. No giraffes. Hello Elizabeth in Milwaukee. You had a nice question about secretary birds and why we don't see them more often. They are quite endangered. They've got a very unusual sort of, I think they struggle to breed mainly. And you know they've got a unique feeding niche, which means that there's not a lot of space in that niche for lots of them to exist. So they eat a lot of snakes by walking along the ground and stomping on their heads. And that's a kind of unique adaptation that very few birds have. And for those of you who don't know what a secretary bird looks like, I will find you one. But we do see them, and apparently the last time you saw one with Mark, it managed to fly off. Now I've seen a secretary bird try to fly, and it's interesting. They're huge things, and they really struggle to fly in the absence of wind. And I've watched one try and take off with the wind as opposed to against it, and almost unable to get off the ground for any length of time. Alright, we're just going to stop here and have a listen, and I'll find you the secretary bird. It's always good to stop and have a listen. We need to get a secretary bird page. And I believe that the secretary bird was actually on this very airstrip, which makes sense. They like open areas. They won't only eat snakes, I mean they'll eat various other things, but there's a secretary bird there. And we think it is so named because of the plumes that come out of its head that apparently look like the pens a secretary might put in her hair, I guess. I'm but not convinced that's what it is. That very kind of, and it's on the same page as an ostrich. They're a family with only one species in it. Extant in current conditions. Right, not a lot going on the airstrip here, so we'll carry on towards Arathusa camp and the waterhole there and see what's going on there, and hopefully try and pick up some leopard tracks on the way. We're also kind of hoping that the wild dogs might come up. They have dens on the property sort of to the south of them. And they would come up to hunt every so often. Any station copying me on Arethusa? Sorry, I'm just looking for an update this morning. Doesn't seem to be much going on here. Probably thanks, I'm probably new 1 out of 5. Not to worry, thanks very much. So we're on our own, trying to find the action. It's here. Have a look at these two. Let's see what they're eating. Now the other day I came here with Scott on my one and only day on camera, after which I was swiftly fired, thankfully, and we saw some hornbills and some starlings exactly like this. They'd found the nest of a harvested termite, and they were busy sort of picking the poor old termites out from before they could get back and walk over to where their holes. That hornbill is, I'm just going to, when he moves, I think that's what they're doing here and there. So while we are sitting here looking at that hornbill, very comments about Father's Day yesterday, and we spoke about some animals that are either good or bad fathers, and some of you have said that the hornbill is an extremely dedicated father. You're absolutely right. There are lots of birds that are dedicated fathers. Very few mammals. The birds tend to set the example and go into and treat the hole. The male hornbill does with mud. He'll seal her into the hole. He shed all her feathers, and then when he feeds her, and then when the eggs hatch, normally her feathers have grown back, and she'll come out of the hole and they'll seal it up together, and then come back to feed the chicks through the little slit in that hole until they're old enough to come out. The females, I think that they'll lose quite a few of their feathers, though. In fact, I don't think they're completely vulnerable at that stage. So the hornbill is in fact an excellent father. And the purpose, of course, of them losing their feathers, a bit like our mothers like to line our cots with warm downy things for us to sleep on. So it is with the hornbill. Right, I'm going to disturb him, and I'm just going to see if we can't find what he's eating there. He'll come back. Hello, Anna Marie. You want to know, do secretary birds eat insects as well as snakes? Anna Marie, basically any carnivore out here will eat insects. From Now I can't find these termites, I'm afraid. I'm just going to sit here for a little while. Anna Marie, any carnivore, from any carnivorous bird to carnivorous mammal to carnivorous reptile and amphibian, they will all eat insects at one stage or another. They're a good source of energy, a good source of fat, which a lot of animals need out here to survive, including us. And so, same thing. So yes, a secretary bird will absolutely eat insects, especially when they're available. I mean, when Scott and I found the termite nest here, we actually spotted it because of a tawny eagle, which is normally a carrion eater, that was sitting picking termites out of the ground. So yes, absolutely. Just like most of the other carnivores, the secretary bird will certainly eat insects. They're not specialized for it though. They've got the hooked bill of a raptor. You know, it's a meat-tearing bill. That's what the bill is designed for. It's very heavy bill. And I can't find the termite nest here. Oh yes, I can. Can I? No, I can't. No. So we'll carry on in search of something slightly larger. Very peaceful day developing again. I mention that a lot, but it really is one of the major reasons that I like to live out here. You have the action of the morning, and then the peace of the middle of the mid-morning kind of descends on the place. For those lions, it descended a lot earlier than for the rest of us. Hello Miles, you're just 8 years old watching with your grandmother Judy in which I think gets quite a lot colder than we get out here. I've stopped under this tree while we answer this question of yours. A beautiful Balanites tree or torchwood tree. And you want to know about how big scorpions get, and scorpions get large out here. Some of the biggest scorpions are that big, so that's about the biggest that we get, and they tend to be fairly not dangerous to us. They've got big pincers for catching things, and the tail is quite thin, and it's just used for defense. It's not really used for catching prey. What you got to watch out for, Miles, if you ever come out here, the little black and brown ones like that, with big fat tails like my finger, and tiny little pincers. And what that means is that they like to use their tails to kill. They don't like to use the pincers, and those are the ones you've got to watch out for. And just remember though, a scorpion, if it stings a person, is just trying to defend itself. It would never sting us to try and kill us, because it can't eat us, so it would be a waste of its venom to do that. Thanks, Miles. Good to have you along. Here that Arethusa is a fairly barren of mammal life this morning. Must be somewhere. I wonder if there was there anything seen on the Arathusa camera over the last, say, 12 hours. Any of you can send us an update on that. That would be great. I'm perhaps thinking of elephants. They've spent quite a long time around this area in the last 2 or 3 days. Stop and have a listen to the birds here. There's a lovely drongo there. Can you get him, Viam, or I've parked you right behind a tree?
Right behind a tree.
Yeah. How's that? There we go. Still slightly behind a tree. Sorry about that. Now that, everybody, is a drongo, and he's mimicking various other birds, so just have a listen to him. He's mimicking a robin. He's mimicking some blue waxbills. Scrub robin. And there's a bit of a bird party around here. You can hear the drongo, and there's a little crombeck below him. I don't know if you can see the crombeck there, can you, again? He's there. Tiny little bird hopping up and down. We'll be lucky to find him. He's on that sort of strychnos bush there. You got him?
Yeah, but he's flying away.
There he is. This is a bird called the long-billed crombeck on the ground there. And the long-billed crombeck has a supposedly long bill, but most importantly, as you can see there, he's got no tail, so that's the easiest way to identify him. He goes, yeah, that's his little call. You can still hear that chirping sound as the drongo mimicking various other birds. Up a bit now. So we're going to go across to Brent. He's found some more interesting parents, and so we'll go across to him, enjoy, and we'll see you a bit later, hopefully with something spectacular. See you now.
Welcome back, everyone. We stopped off at an old friend who we have seen in this hole a few times, and one of the reasons we stopped at this hole is our sieges. Yeah, James has been discussing. I know you're discussing hornbill see at the moment. This is the time and type of hole a hornbill would use, probably a bit rounder, and that's how they would. Then they would build up the mud across there and just leave a feeding hole, so the male's able to feed the female through there. But this hole in particular would not be a good idea, as Brian is going to show you shortly as we blow out a little bit. And there you can see a very reptilian eye in that hole, and that is a rock monitor, and he has decided to take up residence in this hole, which according to Scott tells me in November last year was actually a woodlands kingfisher nest. And there's a possibility that this rock monitor might have even eaten the eggs or the babies of that kingfisher and decided that this is such a great spot that he has taken it over, or she has taken it over almost permanently. And we see this monitor quite often when we travel down this road. Still snug inside there, but sometimes you'll see it half out catching some morning sun, and the sun hasn't quite got around to that side of the it has been quite cold, so it's still snug inside Djuma Dam. So, but whether she went down there for a drink is difficult to say. I think probably not, because I've been following these tracks from Buffelshoek Dam. So we've been following them for quite a long way now. When you last left me, I was actually following up on a young male tracks in that area, but then these females tracks were so much more fresh that we made the call and we moved on to the female tracks. Tracking a leopard is sometimes a very difficult thing. It's only one track and steps on one little bit of hard ground, and I showed Brian some of the tracks we were following there, and the reason I'm not showing you where the tracks are on that is because you can literally barely see them with my eye, and actually right above them, so I don't think we're going to be able to get on camera. But we are still hot on the trail, or maybe not as hot as I would like, a few hours behind. Hi Liz from Wisconsin, welcome on the back of the neck of this wonderful sunrise safari, Liz. Managed to get up into that hole. Well, Liz, they're actually the terrestrial monitors, unlike the water monitors, are actually incredibly agile climbers. They've got really long claws. And they are able to grip onto that, into any little gap and whatnot on the wood and climb up. They do feed quite a lot off birds' eggs, so they are very adept climbers. So just very carefully check along here. Brian, where's she hiding?
I have no idea. Too many tracks going in too many directions.
Okay, well, keep checking down here. There have been other vehicles down here this morning. Where would I want to go? And if I were a female leopard, where would I want to go? I think we should check the Gallagher waterhole. Hi, Brian from Missouri. Welcome on the back of the vehicle, this sunrise safari. Brian would like to know whether we get hurricanes or tropical depressions during the dry season, and would this bring rain, and how would it affect the ecology? That's a very good question, Brian. Our dry season, we normally do get rain maybe once or twice, and that is from a big cold front or tropical storm that it would be out from Mozambique, and we'll get sort of a tail end of it. It is very little rain, and it's only for a day or two at the most, and very little rain, so it doesn't actually affect the ecology of the dry season that much. You will get a few plants that will have a little burst, and the grasses will get a little bit of green, but rain, and only once or twice during the dry season. So, and sometimes it doesn't come at all, but sometimes it does. But it is quite miserable, I can tell you, when that does happen, because apart from being freezing for us, there's also now wet to contend with, and that sort of seems to get to your bones. Oh, good spot, Brian. So, a predator, but not the predator we're looking for. And we can hear in the distance some squirrels who probably alarm calling at that. So who can tell me which bird this is? Who can tell me which bird this is? You can send your answers to questions@WildEarthTV or use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Very beautiful. I'm wondering where the other you can hear the grey go-away birds also quite upset about them being in this area, or that particular one. I'm just trying to have a look around to see if I can see the other. That took off. Wow. I hope you guys also got some great screenshots. There we go. See, you never know what's going to be around the next corner. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful bird.
Yeah, nice shot.
No, thanks, B-Dog. Yeah, so quite lucky. I was like, oh, should I take a picture? Shouldn't I? But such nice morning light, sitting there. And literally, as I picked up the camera, you saw the body position change. And awesome. Definitely going to have to tweet that one. So see if you, I'm sure some of you guys must have got some great screenshots of that as well. There we go. As I said, I was wondering where the other one was. And they're both there. So the pair of them. So that's actually just below them. There's some birds that are quite upset about them being in the area. And it's not a bird we see that often. We hear them quite often, but they're very busy birds. So if we drop down a little bit there they are. It's a Rhett's helmet shrike. I'm going to try edge a little bit closer. With these large predators, avian predators here. I'm just going to move to the side. I don't want to drive right up under them in case they take off. Welcome back. Sorry about that. Gremlins are creeping about. It's normally a little bit late in the day for gremlins. They normally start a bit earlier, but hopefully we have managed to zap them. Our technical geniuses have been on it, so we're not quite sure what you heard and what you didn't. So if I am recapping, I apologize. So Dave would like to know about monitor lizards and are they poisonous, and how big do they get? Dave? Oh, we will get to that in a second. This one evaded VM and I yesterday, this beautiful little bird. Hopefully we can catch him today. And is that little bee eater? Very, very pretty. Hopefully moves out into the sunshine. Very, very pretty birds. When they sleep, it's actually quite interesting. If you find them in a spotlight, you can sometimes find 7 or 8 of them in a little huddle. And named bee eaters because they do feed off bees. There we go. Thank you for turning. Such a beautiful bird. So when they catch wasps and bees and other things that have stings, whoop. Oh, he's come a little bit closer. He actually came to chase an insect that came towards us. So when they get hold of bees and other stinging insects, they will actually beat them against a branch or that they're sitting on, and that is to obviously kill them so they don't get stung while they eat them. It was actually very close to here where VM and I were evaded by this little guy yesterday, so possibly the same one, and puffed up in the chilly morning. Very beautiful, giving us a nice show this morning. Such incredible colors. Incredibly fast. And there we go, back to the same perch. So let's see if he catches anything. While we're watching this, I'll just finish up on those monitor lizards. So the monitor lizards, Dave, are not poisonous. They do have a lot of bacteria in their mouth because they do eat quite a lot of carrion. So if they do bite you, it can be quite painful and can get infected. Actually, one of their more common uses of defense is their long tail. They'll whip it around and it can use it like a whip. And then PK would like to know, how many lizard species do we get in the area? And I said we get a lot, lots and lots, from skinks and monitor lizards to aceps to plated lizards, flat lizards, grass lizards, girdled lizards, agamas, and even a very strange branch of lizards called worm lizards. The biggest lizard we get is the monitors, and then the next one is the plated lizards. We've got a giant plated lizard that we get here, as well as a bushveld plated lizard. And some of these lizard species are incredibly beautiful and have some incredible colors. But I think my favorite for the reptiles is definitely the geckos. They have incredible coloration, some of them, very great camouflage, and they're often around human habitation, feeding off. Oh, bee eaters done a disappearing act. So we can have a look at the geckos. I'm just trying to find. And you've got very different types. You've got dwarf geckos, house geckos. The most common one we probably get is, I'm going to find him now. Oh, there we go, nearly there. Is that Moreau's tropical house gecko. And they're incredibly efficient little predators that feed around, especially around human habitation, around the lights, catching all the bugs that come. And then probably the most striking of the lizard species that we get here is the tree agama. And they've got a wonderful Afrikaans name, which is a blauwkop-koppermander. And it means a blue-headed big lizard. Let me just try to find a picture of him for you quickly. Agamas. We call them, there we go, 194. So they've got the most striking coloration is definitely on the tree agama. As I said, the Afrikaans is called a blauwkop-koppermander. There we go. You can see that really bright blue head. Let's open the book a little bit more. And put it there. Is that better?
Yeah.
So very, very pretty. The females are quite dull in comparison to the males, that bright blue head and orange bodies. But we still had that brief visual of that martial eagle, and he was heading in this direction, so we're hoping if we move up here we might get lucky enough to spot him sitting at the top of a big tree. So while we search for the apex predator of the sky, James has returned to the apex predator of the land. So we're going to cross back to James and see what's happening with the Nkuhumas.
Hello everybody. Welcome back to Wendy. We've traversed the whole of Arathusa, failed to come up with anything, so we've come back to the magnificent Nkuhuma Pride and this little sub-adult who we're focusing on, who's a little bit interested in our vehicle, which is quite nice, and has now gone fast asleep. In the background you can hear a Cokie Franklin calling. And I must just apologize for the issues we've had with streaming. We're not sure exactly what the case is. We do think that the incident of the shovel, the incident of the errant shovel that chopped various wires in half, has caused quite a lot of the problem. So we're sorry about the pixelation of the picture and the quality thereof. We're working on it. Rest assured, Eugene will not sleep for the next 72 hours. He probably won't eat either, So his life will be the opposite to what you're currently witnessing on these lions. Viam said to me a little bit earlier, we saw a waterbuck in Arathusa, and he said he'd like to hug a waterbuck because they look like the furriest animals in the bush. I'm not sure I agree with him. I think you'd come away smelling quite appalling. But I think the fur on that lion that he's just shown us looks pretty, yeah, that looks pretty furry. Of course, if you hug that, you'll never play the guitar again, in the words of Basil Fawlty. Hello, little Miles in Minnesota, hanging out with your grandmother, Judy in Minnesota. You are not at school. I'm assuming that's because it's night time or because it's now the summer holidays. You want to know when I first decided that I wanted to be a game ranger. Miles, that's a long and complicated story that involves a woman, but basically, to say in the long and short of it is, one day when you're old enough, I'll sit you down over a beer and we'll have a chat about it. But all you need to know for now is that I always wanted to live in a beautiful place. It wasn't so much that I wanted to be a guide or show people. I just wanted to do some kind of a job that allowed me to live in a beautiful place. And that's how I came to be doing the job that I'm doing now. And you can't really get more magnificent than this sort of area where you have the chance of seeing animals like this around every corner. And sometimes there's not a lot, but sometimes you come around a corner like we did this morning, Viam and I, in a beautiful, cold, misty winter morning, and there was a great big pride of lions. And that's just a real privilege. So that's why, Miles, that's why I've ended up in the bush like this. Hello, Melissa. The very nice question, actually. Why do we never hear that classic MGM lion roar? Basically because the lion that's doing it in the MGM thing, I don't believe is actually roaring. I think it's probably yawning, and it's an attached sound bite to the roaring lion. Look at this high action for lions at this time of the day. So I think that's probably the answer, Melissa. A lion, different lions sound slightly different, and at night, I'm not sure if you've heard a lion roar at night on Wild Earth or anywhere else, but they do make a very classic kind of a lion roar, and it doesn't sound anything like the MGM lion's roar. So like I say, I think if I'm thinking back correctly to the MGM lion, I think that lion is in fact yawning, and the sound that they've applied to it is a fairly doctored version of a lion's roar. Nice question, Melissa. That's actually very interesting. I'm sure there are a lot of people around the world who have never heard a real lion roar, thinking that that's what they sound like. Michael, just to wrap up the little discussion we had about dung beetles and moths and dung beetles careening into the foreheads of unsuspecting high-paying tourists in South Africa. Not very great for our tourism industry, but you know, the dung beetles just won't listen. You say they probably don't fly into the sun because they're nocturnal. I think that's probably pretty good postulation, Michael. They don't tend to fly into the moon either, though, which is a little confusing. But yeah, dung beetles are active a lot during the day, though. They're not necessarily nocturnal, and in fact will be very active during the day if they can find the right kind of dung. William, you've asked a question. Have lions ever hunted a red October? Now, by red October, I honestly cannot tell what you mean. Perhaps a submarine? And therefore you might be talking about lions hunting a crocodile, perhaps? If that is the case, yes, lions will take crocodiles every so often. If it is not the case, and I'm totally misinterpreting your question, please do send through a definition of a red October, and I will be able to answer it for you. That's William, who wants to know, do lions ever attack or hunt red October? And so if anyone else can clarify that, maybe you maybe you can help me out. Hello Chris, you want to know how long is the average lion claw? Well, Viam, if you can just focus on this little thorn bush that I have in my hand here. Chris, the average lion claw is probably about as long as this thorn that I'm holding in my hand. They're obviously a bit thicker and more pointed and sharp, but that's the basic. They're shaped exactly like a domestic cat's claw, but they're probably about that long. And so quite a formidable piece of equipment that they have. I wouldn't like to be hit in the face with one of those claws. They really are crucial for the hunting process, and I mean they would allow the lions to gain the grip on their prey as they as they try and bring down animals often much bigger. So we're just going to go across to this little lioness here, sub-adult, and it's so interesting to see. Yesterday it was so clear how the dominance works, and its dominance works in a pride. It's purely to do with size. Junior ate himself into a stupor. The bigger lionesses ate pretty well, and these sub-adults hardly got anything at all. So once a lion weans, which is at 6 months, it turns into something of a nightmare for them to try and eat, because no one will feed them. They take the scraps that they can get, and in times of when times are tough, starvation is one of the leading forms of lion death, and that's often why the youngsters just can't survive. Just going to go a little bit forward so we can get a slightly better view. So we're just going to go quickly across to Brent, who's found some hippos, and we'll come back here just now and just before we end the show. Enjoy with Brent, the hippopotami.
Welcome back, everyone. We came to have a look if Hippo Beach was occupied, and it is, but they're still quite early, so a few of them haven't moved out onto that beach to bask, and some of the younger ones have, and that could be because they are younger and they don't have that big subcutaneous fat layer that as developed as the adults, that they might feel the need to bask a little bit earlier. But it is wonderful at this time of the year when all the hippos do go out basking. And so we're sitting here at Sydney's Dam. Also, there's male leopard tracks headed in this direction, but the leopards have really had my number for the last little bit. So PK from Iowa has posed a challenge. PK, this is not an easy challenge you have posed. PK has posed the challenge to try show more lizards. PK, I will definitely do my best. I'm going to have to start looking out for giant plated lizards, basking spots and things like that. So PK just wants to see a few more lizards than we normally do. So I will try my best. It is quite difficult, but I will definitely, going forward, keep an eagle eye out for lizards, and I'm sure Brian will do the same. But it's been a really great morning. We've had a little bit of a frustrating morning. I haven't seen this many sets of leopard tracks on Djuma for a while. Just none of them were particularly fresh, unfortunately. All the male tracks were sort of from early last night. So, again, makes it quite difficult. We're sort of 12 to 8 hours behind them. And then the most fresh were those female tracks, and we were still probably 4 or 5 hours behind on those. But hopefully during the day they move out of wherever they've been hiding, and we're going to be able to find them. So it's going to be an interesting afternoon, and always amazing that we do have lions. So that's great that we have lions, and James, I'm sure, will be following up there. And hopefully they're going to be a little bit more active than they've been on the sunrise safari, out the sunset safari. But from Brian and myself and the hippos at Hippo Beach, have a wonderful rest of your day or morning or evening, wherever it may be in the world. And hopefully we'll see you all on the sunset safari. Cheers.
Hello everyone, I hope you enjoyed the hippopotami with the irascible Brent Leo Smith. Brent, just so that you know, hasn't had leave for about 3 months. He is a repository of an astonishing amount of energy, and we're very lucky to have him, I feel. The question from William about the Red October was in fact a red herring, and William's attempt at a profoundly amusing humour. Thank you very much for that, William. I think I thank you for it. I'm not sure yet if I'm amused or not, but we do love to have your interactions, so keep them coming. So we're just going to spend another few minutes with these lions before VM and I go back to have our breakfast. Hello Heidi in Zurich, you want to know, very nice question, do we have institutes and charity organizations that looked after sick or injured animals? Yes, there are a few around the place. The most obvious one is a place called Maholo Holo, which is just near Hoedspruit, not too far from here. Here comes Junior Wiem, just to the left. And there are a few others, and certainly around this area. Not that many rehabilitation centres, but certainly charities that do look after endangered species. So not so much the lions in this area, but certainly the wild dogs and the cheetahs, and there's quite a lot of effort put into that sort of conservation. Junior is now imposing himself. bodily on the rest of the pride. And lots of others throughout Africa. And I mean, you made mention of something called the DSWT. You don't perhaps mean the DSWF, David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation, or Trust maybe. And they run, for example, they're a British charity, and they run lots of different animal programs throughout Africa, an elephant orphanage in Zambia, and there are various other conservation things that they do throughout Africa. So there are lots of them that look after various aspects of lion conservation and animal conservation. And one of our local ecotourism companies called Wilderness Safaris, which is a brilliant company, they spend a huge amount of money on conservation in the areas where they run lodges. Hello, Gilly in Wisconsin. You want to know if I will ever be able to find the den where the gremlins are that have made trouble with our signal and continue to give us Eugene sleepless nights and cause his hair to fall out. He's starting to look a bit bald like me these days. First of all, just to apologize once again before we leave you for our technical hitches. We are on it. We're doing our best to rectify the problems, and there are various issues we have to deal with on a daily basis, so we are sorry about them, just while we refine the product. Gilly, the answer is no, I won't be able to find the burrow, and that's because they're not really burrow dwelling, our gremlins. They're probably more alien life forms that knock about in the stratosphere, causing trouble with our signals and knocking on stealing parts of the satellites so that they can go and fix their spacecraft and that sort of thing. So I don't think we're going to be able to find the gremlins out here. One of them crash lands, I'll make certain to find it and show it to you. And I mean, apparently there was an issue in 2009, 2008 when the monkeys and the baboons were destroying bits and pieces of the equipment. That is not unusual. Monkeys and baboons are like street gangs of naughty kids, and they love to run around the place and pull bits and pieces apart, especially if they don't understand how they work, which is in fact most things. They don't understand how many things work. So that was the morning. Thank you very much for joining us. A big thank you to Tara and whoever else is in the morning. Started off very misty and cold. It's turned into a beautifully crystal clear, low-felt winter's day. I hope you've enjoyed the lions. I hope you've enjoyed a few of the birds and some of the other things that we found. And we're going to see you again later on the afternoon drive. Thank you for your time, your contribution and your questions. We love them. We love to hear from you. Keep sending them through and keep an eye on the damn cams during the day. And we'll see you a bit later.